Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to today's MBA Analytical session. I am Dipinti, an incoming MBA candidate at Dartmouth TAC, your host for this evening. And with me today, as our guest, is Dhananjaya, who is an MBA candidate at UNC Kenan Flagler Business School. He's already in his second year. He's going to start his classes for the second year from August, and he's already completed 1 year of his MBA. So loads of insights we're going to share in today's session around admissions, around the entire MBA experience in the pandemic, and so Dhananjay has a very unique story of applying, and let me tell you that he is in Kenan Flagler with full scholarship. So that's definitely a commendable thing, and we're going to ask a lot of questions around that. How did he go to that level of scoring a full scholarship? So Dhananjay, welcome to the session, and so congratulations on your full scholarship, on already completing 1 year of your MBA, and I hope that we have a great session today.
Thank you, Depinti, for such a fantastic introduction. Hi, everyone. I am Dhananjaya. As Dipinti mentioned, I've already started my MBA studies at UNC Kenan Flagler, and I'm really excited to share my personal experiences with you all. And I really hope you all learn a lot from this session.
Amazing. So yeah, let me just take you quickly through how the session is going to progress, so that you know when is the time that you need you need insights from. So we'll talk about, of course, we'll start with Dhananjay's profile as we usually do, what he did pre-MBA and what was that one point where he decided to go for an MBA. Because I think this is something that's really unique for every candidate, and it makes a lot of sense to know their their pre-MBA experience and what they would like to do after their MBA, like the short and long-term goals. Post that, we will move on to his applications. Now, as I told you, Dhananjay has secured a full scholarship from UNC Kenan Flagler, and besides that, he had also secured a lot of substantial amount of scholarships from other business schools that he had applied to. And he applied to 11 schools in round one, which is commendable. So we'll ask him around his strategy. And while working full time, he scored 760 in GMAT. He applied to 11 business schools. So, which I think, a lot of us can learn a lot of time management tactics from him. So we'll ask him about that. And then we will move on to the scholarship aspect. So the primary focal point of the session will be what factors are important while getting scholarships from business schools. And, since Dhananjay comes from a sort of like a competitive pool, I would say, of Indian engineers, we are also going to talk about that how did he position himself as a unique candidate and then secured all of those great amounts of scholarship. Yeah. So, at the end, we will take up all your questions, but make sure that if you have any questions from now, you can add them in the comment box. And once we are done with the Q&A, we're going to take up your questions at the end. So yeah, that was all about the brief summary of the session. So Dhananjay, let's start with the fact that you have already completed 4 terms or 4 semesters of your MBA. So yeah, I mean, great. Just tell us, how your experience has been. It's been a virtual experience from what we talked about, but do tell us, like, how different was it, how unique was it, and are you really looking forward to finally meeting all your classmates and everyone in person?
Yeah, I mean, personally, as we all know, the pandemic has really disrupted lifestyle in all the ways of life we know. And MBA was no different. We all were expecting something quite a different experience when we started. When we were in February 20, we were looking at a personalized and offline MBA experience. And then the pandemic hit, and we were all quite startled about what was going on. We went through a lot of issues regarding visas, and the entire government of USA saying that the online students will not be allowed to enter the country. So there were multiple challenges, frankly, frankly even starting the MBA program. But eventually, once the MBA started, I think it was a surreal experience. I think we were all able to meet each other in our own time zones. We were all having our own classes together. The academics was, I think, the teachers and everything were quite commendable job they did, because they were able to handle an entire class of over 400 to 500 students on a daily basis, regularly. So that's a commendable job. Overall, I would say in my experience, the academics were pretty much all right, not an issue. And the recruiting and networking session was also pretty much all right, because companies were pretty okay to meet in online sessions, and we had ample opportunities to network with all the companies individually on a one-on basis. And also we had enough time for peer interactions. The clubs and the networking sessions, they were all in our own online mode, and we had all of us, everything was going on Zoom, and we could all enter into smaller breakout rooms, and everything was great. I mean, I didn't really find a challenge with it. The only challenge which I would say was probably that, we had time zone issues. So we used to be a little late in the day, and it used to be, that was a little bit of a challenge coming from India. And but if you're willing to really, work it out, I think it's all fine. I mean, you can also do that, so that's fine. Yeah.
Amazing. So tell me. So you told me that the academics were fine, and I mean it was still okay. So do you think that so now that you're finally going for an say an in-person experience, but let's say that as sometime or the other in the future, the virtual is back again, and a lot of us we actually fear the virtual classrooms a lot. We think that virtual is not able to provide the MBA experience that is actually the real MBA experience, if we can call it so. But do you think that is true, or do you think that no, even with virtual, you were able to network well with your classmates, with the alumni, and everything was smooth in that?
Frankly, in my opinion, I would have obviously preferred to be in person over there. I mean, there's no other reason why I would prefer an online MBA to an in-person MBA. I would definitely prefer to be in person.
Hmm.
But given the situation, if there is a pandemic, if there's no other option left, and we are all again doing it from our own rooms, so
Hmm.
I mean, it's fine. We can all manage it all. It's not a big loss, I would say. The academics is something. It's even better when you are sitting at your own home. You have videos which you can watch again and again. You have all these resources online which you can look into again and again, and that really helps you a lot. In fact, my learning was that all the videos I could actually go and watch them again, so that really helped me in cementing the concepts in my head. That's something that I really took out of the academics. Networking sessions, they were all people. We were all able to meet everybody. It was fine. I think recruiting wise, I would say it was even better, because if it had been in person, we would have had to travel to, say, New York for investment banking, or a Chicago office for consulting. That actually saved us a lot of time. We were able to get on Zoom calls with so many people in a
Hmm.
day, and cost-wise also that was really helpful for us.
Hmm.
So it's manageable, but definitely I would say the in-person experience is something that's really great. But even if it's online, I would say go for it and make the best out of it. Yeah.
Hmm. Amazing. I think you shared a lot of insights which said that even if the experience is virtual, there are definitely pros to it. And there may be cons, but yeah, there are definitely pros. Like you mentioned, the that you manage your living expenses without having to spend a lot of money. And besides that, you were able to network with people all around the world without having them travel to your place, or without you having to go to their place, which saved you a lot of time. So yeah, thank you for that. And it's great to know that you had a great great MBA experience till date. So okay, let's move on to your profile. And I know that you worked with some private equity firms and some investment banking firms pre MBA. So tell us a little bit about what you did before starting your MBA, and what was that one point, or what was that motivation behind the fact that you decided to take up an MBA for the next step of your career.
Yeah, I mean, so my background is of an engineer. I did my engineering from West Pilani, passed out in 2014. I had a degree of master's in economics with a bachelor's in manufacturing engineering. I particularly decided that my background of engineering, I did not really want to work on the shop floor. I wanted to probably have a more of an AC office, and so definitely I wanted to get back into the business side of things. And during college, I was particularly keen upon working in the finance field. I think so. I decided to pursue work for an investment banking firm. I then got into working with a private equity firm. I think then around that time when I was working with a private equity firm, I decided that I should go for an MBA, because if you look at the career hierarchy of people working in private equity and investment banking, most of the people have their MBA, and it's a very cutthroat industry. So definitely an MBA was a must. So that was the reason why I wanted to get an MBA. I decided to go for a global MBA because in the private equity industry, it's all about connections and getting in the capital for the fundraising aspects. So a global MBA definitely made sense. So that around that time, I decided to get into the global MBA scene, but I knew that my pool of applicants would be very competitive. Indian engineering male was probably the worst section of applicants to be in. So I had to differentiate myself somehow. And so I decided to then probably do something different that would really hold me good in the eyes of the admissions committee. I went, worked with the government, and both at the union level as well as the state level. That was really personally an enriching experience for me. Worked with some of the smartest people in the country, and that sort of application I could actually relate. So that was another a tough aspect, because I had a bit of challenges which I will speak about later in the video, and how I had to bring that together in the story, bring it back to the investment banking goals and the private equity goals. But from a differentiation aspect, from applicants' perspective, that was really crucial, and probably one of the reasons why I was able to get a scholarship also. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, you touched briefly on all the subjects, including the fact that you definitely came from a very competitive pool of Indian engineers, and we do hear a lot of stereotypes around that pool, or those set of candidates. You also told a little bit about your stint with the government, like with the union and the state government, and how it really helped add that distinctive feature to your application, which was eventually helpful in landing a scholarship. So I mean, great strategies, and thank you for walking us through that in brief. And we're going to delve deep into all of that, so that it's not just specific to Dhananjaya, so that you guys can also generalize this in your application. Like when you're applying for business school, how do you know what to do in order to make your profile stand out from the ton of other applicants who are also applying, right? So yeah, thanks for that. And let's move on to your business school selection timeline. Now, as I mentioned in our intro, I know that you applied to around 11 business schools in in the round one itself, which I would say is a pretty tough job, because I applied to around 7 business schools in round one. 4 from the US, 1 from Europe, and 2 from India. And I was like totally exhausted. I was like, okay, and I cannot do anything more. I'll not apply to anything in round two again. So yes, do tell us about that, and do tell us, was there any specific reason that you targeted all of your schools in round one itself?
Yeah, so I mean, my particular reason for applying in round one in 11 schools was frankly scholarships. I wanted to get, I have spoken to a lot of seniors and a lot of people who had gone through the business school journey. And what I understood from most of them was, for the international applicants, most of the selection was done in round one. So I definitely had to target round one. And what I also got a sense about was that the schools that were providing these scholarships were primarily in the range of ranked, say, 15 to say a 25 type of school. So I broadly spoke to a lot of seniors. I networked a lot, and I actually created an Excel of all the schools that were giving out scholarships, and I zeroed in upon around these 10 or 11 schools that were really, the ones where I would stand a good chance of getting a scholarship. I knew that there were only 4 or 5 ones which were frankly the ones that would really give me a lot of scholarship. So those ones were really important. But overall, I wanted to target a set of 11 schools. These schools are targeted, and my primary purpose for that was just scholarship. I mean, round one, I just wanted to get in as much scholarship as possible. I knew the US economy, especially, this was before Corona happened, so was heading towards a recession. There was not good signs of, I mean, there was always the visa issues that were happening during that time for international applicants. So all those things are now resolved out. All those things are now much better. So at that time, so my primary purpose was just of getting the scholarships. So yeah, that was a part.
Okay, okay. And do tell us, like, working full time, say someone who works in a week, say, normally we all work for about 50 hours, like 45 to 50 hours on an average in a 5 day work week. So do tell us that, despite working so many hours or maybe a little more than that also, how did you get the time or how did you manage your time to apply to so many business schools? What was your strategy behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I was frankly, I knew that I had around, this was, so I had started passed out in 2014 and I
Hmm,
was applying for the 2020 intake. So
hmm,
round one deadline was sometime in September 2019.
hmm,
And I had a GMAT score of roughly 760. The previous year, I had gotten in July or August of 2018. So I knew that I would be now applying into the next year only because I do not
hmm,
have the timeline for 2019 round and 2018 round, sorry. And so I started quite early, frankly. I started everything, the consultant process, working on my essays, on my resumes a little bit earlier. So I started at around, I would say, March or April of 2019. And I had enough time on myself. So that really helped me. But as we always say, we are engineers, so we always keep things for the last moment. And 11 schools deadlines are so close by. Working on each of them, everything is so close by that we had to make time for it at the last moment also. And my basic target was that that try to get in as much as possible on each day. So mornings and evenings, I used to just log it out. I mean, if September was a deadline, August and July, these 2 months, I just worked a lot. I just worked a lot, especially in the mornings and then late nights. And that was the only time you have for yourself because during the rest of the day, you are tied up in some work or something else. Yeah, so I made time for on that, and obviously weekends I had to make a lot of time for that.
hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think Dhananjay well said, and I think the key insights that we could get from your answer. So first of all, what I think is start as early as possible. Like for the first step would be GMAT, and get done with that as soon as you can. Like whenever if you're targeting the 2022 intake, for example, or the 2021 intake, for example, if you're not done with your GMAT until now, then I would strongly recommend that get it done as soon as possible because the deadlines are closing in, and then you wouldn't have a lot of buffer time left for your applications. And then people sometimes, they do GMAT and they try to tackle the applications together, but it wouldn't be a good strategy because then you would mix up everything, right? So get your GMAT done as soon as possible, and then as Dhananjay mentioned, start your essays early, like take out some 4 or 5 hours or 3 to 4 hours in a day, and reserve a few hours for networking, reserve some hours for thinking about your essays, for finishing or finalizing your resume. Mornings and night, as he mentioned, when your work is done, just shut off, just log out, and reserve that time for your preparation. And of course weekends, definitely they're super important when you're preparing for business school. So yeah, thank you, Dhananjay, for sharing all of those. Now there's an interesting question, and actually this was a part of our Q&A, and I can see that a person from the audience has already asked this. So we'll take up Lavanya's question at this point, because I was also going to ask you about the ROI perspective. You said that you're very interested in getting a scholarship, right? So Lavanya's question is also like very straightforward. So would you prefer taking admission where you're getting scholarship, or the institution you really want to go, but you're getting no scholarship or very less scholarship, right? So for example, if I say Ross gives like very good amount of scholarship, Ross and Darden, they are known for giving full rides, right? On the other hand, a business school like Tuck or Stanford, or they give like very less, like like 50% or maybe 30% of scholarship. So what would you prefer? What would your take be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. From a personal perspective, I would have still made the same decision. I would have gone for the scholarship aspect.
Hmm,
My reason is that for an international applicant, If it is out of, say, if it is not a Harvard or a Stanford or a Wharton, out of the top 5 or 6
Hmm.
colleges, I would say that all the other colleges have the opportunities, equal opportunities. It really comes down to how hard you network, how you what you really want to do, and if you're excited about the opportunity or excited about your own long-term goal and a short-term goal, you can network your way through. You can make some opportunities for yourself, and all the colleges out of the top 5 or top 6 have the uh, decent alumni network. So I would say
Hmm.
that getting the scholarship in, and then just starting on your own journey, I would have done that. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Right. So, and as you mentioned, you had a lot of factors in mind when while preferring to go for schools that offered scholarship. For example, you studied the economy, you studied the fact that the expenses in US would be higher, and that's why you decided to go for schools that offer good amounts of scholarship, right? Okay.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, all the schools. So
Hmm.
broadly, the expenditure, if you see,
Hmm.
the tuition expenses are roughly 150,000 for 2 years,
Hmm.
and the living expenses are another $2,000 per month, I would say, including
Hmm.
health insurance, rent, and other utilities, everything. So,
Hmm.
I mean, if you can save upon 150K as much as possible,
Hmm.
your ROI immediately shoots up. You get excellent, and you will have the internship during the year,
Hmm.
in between your first and second years, which will pay around 30K maximum. So
Hmm.
you can do some part-time jobs also during your first year. You can make up for the living expenses by just that. So by the time you end up your MBA, you will have a fresh slate, and you can actually start earning and saving a lot of amount of money. So that would make sense to me. Yeah.
Hmm. Great. Okay, so now that you've answered that, and your choices for choosing schools with scholarship are really, really clear to us, let's move on to your application process. Now, once you knew that the number one goal in your mind was getting into a school that offered a good scholarship, so there were several factors that you would have considered in your profile or in your application in order to increase your chances of getting a scholarship. Because as we all know, these are all merit-based scholarships, and they are quite hard to get. I mean, there are a lot of people competing for the admission seats itself, and then on top of that, if you want scholarship, you really have to work hard. So it would be great if you could tell us, like, in detail, so what are some of the factors that you considered in your application, and in general also, when a student is applying and thinking about scholarship, what would you say are some of the most deterministic factors that increase the chances of getting a scholarship?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure, first aspect is your GMAT score. Um, Indian applicants, international applicants have a very competitive pool, and it would be really great if you can manage a good GMAT score. I would say, if you are managing above 740 or 750, that's really fantastic.
Hmm.
So that would be really placing you in a good position to get a good scholarship. There have been instances in my network also where I have known people who have got above 700, and they have also managed to get good scholarships. So then you can obviously, but you should definitely try for getting scholarships. The second aspect, which I would say, would be leadership opportunities. I think a lot of business school is all about leadership opportunities. So if you can display that you have got a good set of leadership work done throughout your career, that really looks good for the admission committee. The third aspect I would say would be impact. I think impact, if you have created impact in any way in your organization, try to bring about those qualities in your essays and your letter of recommendations that really show that you have succeeded in a few of the areas that you wanted to work in. And again, I think the differentiation aspect, I would say, if you're able to differentiate yourself from the others in any particular way, and these things really look good to the admissions committee.
Hmm.
And you can always have, starting with the great brand name in the investment banking consulting firms, and try to just differentiate yourself a bit. That would really look good to the admissions committee. And again, then polish your resume, polish your essays, work on them again, try to fine tune them, show it to as many people as possible, and just try to make it a great, perfect version. Because at the end of the day, admissions committee is a person who is going to have a one glance or something, maximum 5 or 10 minutes at your applications. So you want to put in your best self forward. Take a bit of time, don't rush. Even if you have a lot of things to do, probably try to manage it a lot together, but definitely don't put in a rushed application, because anybody can make it out immediately. So put in the time to really work upon your applications. And these things, yeah, I mean, is at the end of the day, is a complete package overall. Your GMAT score, your essays, your letter of recommendations, they should all tie in together towards a story. Your resume needs to bring about your aspects, and your essays need to bring about your leadership, your goals, and your story together. So these all need to tie in well together, and so yeah, work upon them diligently.
Okay, okay. You did mention about your the GMAT score and how important it is. That it is one of the crucial aspects, especially for people who come from competitive pool. So tell you scored a 760, which is a fantastic score. It puts you in the top, the 99th percentile, so to say. So do tell us a little bit about your GMAT preparation, because you mentioned that you took the GMAT in 2018. Is that right?
Correct. July 2018, yes.
Okay, okay, but you were still working then when you prepared for GMAT. So do share some insights on how you prepared for GMAT and what were some of the preparation strategies that you followed.
Yeah, so when I came, when I was working in the private equity firm in, yeah, I think end of 2016, I decided I had to go for an MBA. So I started my preparation. I spoke to my seniors. I could find out that there were a lot of, I needed to definitely work upon my verbal skills probably, because that were an aspect that would trouble a lot of the seniors that I spoke to. So I just started reading about it online, a lot of forums and everything, and I realized that I should just start getting in the zone of GMAT preparation. I gave the exam. I realized that I needed to improve it a bit further. I was not at that level. The quant I could manage, but the verbal was not up to the level. And so around that time, I got to know about e-GMAT, and I started preparing working with e-GMAT. And I tried to put in morning 2 to 3 hours, because my work was very hectic. I had just started working with the government also, so I knew it was going to take a lot of my time. So nights were definitely, all work would always stretch late into the night. So mornings are all I had. Mornings I would just work for 2 to 3 hours, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. or 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. That was probably the only time I had. And I would start my preparation by, on a weekly basis. I created a calendar, and I took the subscription for e-GMAT, both verbal and quant, and I just started going through the chapters, the topics. I did not practice any questions at the start. Was not focused upon speed at any aspect. I was just focused on learning the various topics, and getting in the accuracy right. So I just studied it, and for the first 3 months or 4 months, I just wanted to finish the syllabus first. So I think that's something that took a bit of time for me. I just finished the syllabus, and yeah. So once I was through with the syllabus, then I started going on to the scholarinium aspect of e-GMAT, the questions, and that's something that really helped me. Frankly, I mean, they were both medium questions, easy questions, and the higher difficulty level questions, and I could practice myself, test myself against all those set of questions. That really helped. I made notes for all the sort of questions that I got wrong. I would actually make notes of all the questions I got wrong, why I got it wrong, where I got it wrong. I should go back and study those questions again, and mark out the mistakes and the learnings that I had done. Because at the end, it's exam of accuracy. It's an adaptive test, so you need to get the questions right also. And so speed was something I was not really worried about initially. And then once I started giving the mock test, I realized that I was somewhere in the 770. I was getting good scores in the mocks. I started going through the official guide mock exams, and in those exams I got 770 and roughly around those scores. So I knew that I was in a good place. And when I got those scores, then only I booked the exam slot, and I finally gave the exam. I got
Hmm.
the state.
And yeah, the rest is history, right? You got
Yeah.
760, and you got like you got into so many business schools with scholarships. So yeah, you talked, Dhananjay, you talked about the quant aspect, and one thing that I have seen is Indian engineers, they are fairly good at quant, but sometimes what happens is, the fact that when you're good at something, the admissions committee also has an expectation that you should, or anyone coming from India specifically, should score at least a 50 in quant, right? And let's face it, it's not easy to score 50. Like most of us are good at quant, but to score 50, you really need to work hard. It doesn't just, you just start doing and you score 50. A lot of questions may be easy,
Yeah.
but the difficult questions are what you need to nail them right. So in line with that, e-GMAT, we have a product launch of Quant 2.0. As you know that the quant of e-GMAT, it's fabulous, and I myself have used it. I can vouch for it that the examples that they give, the concepts that they explain, it's really really useful. Now Quant 2.0, it's I would say it's a very different and a completely new learning architecture. It has around 1000 plus atomic learning paths. You can understand, adapt, and deliver learning based on your needs. You can customize it, it's completely customizable. And you can actually experience this launch. So we have the launch on July 21st at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, which is around 8 p.m. IST. So yeah, I would say that it's a huge thing, guys. Do look out for it, and people who are using e-GMAT, or even people who are thinking of going to e-GMAT, or subscribing to e-GMAT, do look at Quant 2.0, because I would say that it will be a game changer for all your quant methods that you do. So Kartikeya has added the link in the comment section, as you can see. You can go to the launch event. You can register for that, and it's on July 21st. All right. So let's get back to the session. And so we discussed about GMAT prep. And Dhananjay, great work. I would say that 760 is a phenomenal score. And that, I would say, was one of the most important factors, as you would agree with me, in helping you score scholarships from a lot of business schools, right? It was definitely something that made you stand apart. Okay. So yeah, so let's talk about your, the fact that you chose 11 business schools. Now, as we all know that these top business schools, so your profile may remain the same, like the unique aspects that you highlight, your resume remains the same. But how did you craft 11 different stories to fit into the school? Now, all of these schools have specific questions that ask why this school or why this particular MBA. So tell us that how did you craft 11 different stories or 11 different, why this particular school answers to go with your application? How did you customize your application?
Yeah, I mean, so as I mentioned earlier, also, I think I had a bit of extra time, so I
Hmm.
started early. So that really helped, first of all.
Hmm.
Then I hired a consultant. I realized that it was a very competitive application tool, so I definitely need to get a consultant.
Hmm.
I worked with Admissions Gateway, which is an India-based consulting firm, and they were really helpful.
Hmm.
And then when we come to the essays part, I realized the schools that I was targeting, the top 15 to 25 schools, a lot of the questions they had were quite, I mean, there were definitely schools that were different, but there
Hmm.
were a lot of, most of the schools had quite a similar set of question set.
Hmm.
So the first question was broadly around tell us about your own story, and the
Hmm.
second question was more specific about why this particular school.
Hmm.
And I learned that, while it may look like there are a lot of schools, but you can get in one essay right, and then you can just probably use that one to really apply it to other schools by customizing it accordingly. The customizing section was definitely challenging. It was time consuming because a lot of research had to be done for each particular
Hmm.
school. The second question particularly, for research, I mean, you have the sources, you have the school websites, which has a listing of all the courses, all the clubs, all the networking sessions that they conduct, and various alumni groups that you can reach out to. So that was a good resource. Then obviously LinkedIn, a lot of people put out their profiles on LinkedIn, and with your own set of particular career goal, you can actually research about each person on LinkedIn and get a sense about what are the particular aspects of each school you want really like. Then speaking to each of them in person or through these Zoom calls, just set up a call with everyone and just speaking to them individually. So the research aspect took a bit of time, but it was probably you get to know the insights only through research, and those insights are something that is really important in setting you apart and differentiating you from other candidates. Because speaking to say four students of a batch of an MBA school, you will get to learn about different courses, different clubs, different leadership sessions, networking opportunities, and you can talk about all that in your essay. That really helps your story to set it out. That's something that is really important for me. So I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, these research was very important, and customizing it accordingly took a bit of time. But I knew that after round one, I would not have much work to do. I can take a bit of chill. So I decided to just go full on for the round one. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Definitely makes sense. So we have a comment here, and the question is related to the application process that we were talking about. So you chose a particular consultant, right? And so yeah, based on your reasons for choosing that particular consultant, what would you advise to someone who would like to choose a consultant? So what are some of the factors that people can consider while choosing consultants or while hiring consultants? Because as we see, consultants do take money, they take a lot of money, right? And so what are some of the factors that you considered and you would also advise others to consider while hiring consultants?
Yeah, that's a great question. So,
Hmm.
first of all, I would suggest try to get them in early. Second, I would suggest is that get an India-based consultant, because if people are from an Indian background, they generally understand your application profile and they can work upon it, customize it. They can connect you to students who had a similar profile they worked with in the past. Third,
Okay.
I would say if you have some person who's got a good recommendation for some consultant, try to work with that consultant because that is really known. So that would be really helpful. And definitely, I think at the end of the day, you cannot just rely upon the consultant. You have to work a lot on your own stories, your own short-term goal and long-term goal also. So don't be completely dependent upon the consultant also. And yeah, I mean, the expense part is fine. I think at the end of the day,
Hmm.
if you get in and if you get a scholarship, that's all your expenses covered. Even if you don't get a scholarship and you get in, you would have obviously got in, you would have set in a great application. So and that's why you got in. The
Hmm.
consultant is really helpful. I would look at it not as an expense, more of as an investment into yourself.
Hmm.
Rather better safe than sorry, as you say. So if you save 1 year in getting into a good college, just do that and look at it as an investment, definitely.
Okay, okay. So based on this and your 11 applications, so tell us the schools that you did receive and admit from.
I got an admit from a lot of schools, 11
Hmm.
schools. So broadly, they were Darden,
Hmm.
Tuck, Ross, Cornell,
Okay.
UCLA, Pepper, USC, UNC, Texas, Emory, and Kelly.
Hmm.
And
You applied to
yeah,
all of them, right?
I applied to all of them. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And what are the schools that you received admits from?
Yeah, so from these were schools that I
Hmm.
applied to.
Hmm.
Then I got admits into seven colleges: UNC, Emory, Tepper, Kelly, USC, UCLA, and Ross. These were the colleges that I got admitted into.
Okay. Okay. That's really really great. So out of 11, you got admits from 7 colleges. That's amazing. So that's more than 50%. So that I would say is fantastic actually. And yeah, and tell us about the scholarships that you received from all of these schools.
Yeah. So out of the seven schools that I mentioned, I got scholarships from six schools, and I think so. UNC gave me full scholarship. Emory gave me around $100,000 scholarship. Pepper
Hmm.
was 80, Kelly 80, USC 80, and UCLA was also 80.
Okay.
So total, I think they were around $500,000 of scholarships
Hmm.
from 6 schools
Hmm.
broadly.
Hmm. Okay, so let's talk about an interesting aspect here. So you receive different amounts of scholarship from different business schools, but I think one thing that people often neglect, but they shouldn't, because it really plays an important role, especially in US, is negotiating your scholarship. So, just to give a little bit of background to the audience, if you do not know what's negotiation of the scholarship, it's that, so let's say the business school has offered you about 30% of the scholarship. But then you decide that, you were expecting a little bit more, maybe, 40% or maybe 50% of the scholarship. So there is absolutely ample amount of chance for you to go back to the admissions committee and negotiate on your scholarship. Now, how do you negotiate? You cannot just go and say that, I was expecting 40% and you have given me 30%. So where's my rest 10%? So yeah, it doesn't work like that. You should have some strong ground to base your, say, your wishes on, or your negotiations on. So it can be, so there are a lot of different types of scholarship negotiations. So first of all, let's say that you did manage to get a substantially high GMAT score. Say that your score was somewhere around 700 and then you just bumped it up to 750. So this is something, somewhere you can go back to the adcom, say that I have received a 50 plus points in my GMAT score, and this definitely warrants for an extra scholarship, more than what you have offered to me. The other thing that people I have seen, they do, is, if you have gotten, say, an admit from a peer school, and the peer school has offered you some amount of scholarship, which is, say, 10K greater than what school A has offered to you, but your first choice is school A. So you can go back to school A and just tell them that this is the offer that I have received from school B, in a very subtle manner, and just tell them that, school A still remains my choice, and then negotiate your scholarship. So Dhananjay, can you just shed some light on this, whether you considered negotiating on your scholarships, and did you actually do so?
Definitely, I think so. This is a very important aspect. I think a lot of people, in the rush or the excitement of getting accepted into college, sometimes miss out upon this important aspect of getting and negotiating a scholarship. I personally did try that. I got a full scholarship from UNC, so I spoke to other college, one more college, UCLA, and I tried to get a full scholarship there as well. I mailed them. I told them about the offer that I had already from UNC, and I tried to get another full scholarship from them. They rejected me. They did not. They declined me. So
Hmm.
I after that did not pursue it further.
Hmm.
But I think going from a decent scholarship to a full scholarship is a
Hmm.
little bit of a more challenging task. Sorry, rather than going from a little less scholarship to say a 50% scholarship. I in my
Hmm.
personal
Hmm.
network, I know a lot of students who had scores of 700 and above, and they initially did not get a scholarship or had very less scholarship, but then they actually negotiated with colleges, and they actually managed to increase their scholarship amount to 50% and sizable proportions. So you have to have a offer, and having an offer that is a good amount, that really helps. But even if you don't have that, definitely persist or show some other reasons, your leadership capabilities or the academic work that you have achieved, or other criteria that you think that you are really good in or you have done exemplary work in.
Hmm.
Try to show that aspects again to the admissions committee, again to the MBA admissions team, and speak to them again for a scholarship negotiation. And definitely it works out for sure. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, that's very, very well said, and that's, I would say, accurate. And as you mentioned, there's no harm in trying. So I know one of my friends who was able to increase her scholarship amount by $10,000. And if you look at it, then it may not seem like a huge percentage of how much you're going to spend in your education, but $10,000 in itself is a huge amount. So from, she had gotten some 40 50K of scholarship, and she managed to increase it to 60K. So even that increase does matter, because it's a $10,000 less from what you have to repay back in loan, and plus the interest accrued on that. So yeah, let's not get into those calculations. But if even if you are negotiating, and if you get, like, say, marginal increase, may not be like a huge increase, as Dhananjay rightly mentioned, that going from a partial scholarship to a full ride will be really, really difficult. But going from a percentage of scholarship to another higher percentage of scholarship is possible. And do not give up hopes on that. So, try to negotiate with the AdCom and show substantial reasons for negotiating. Write, mention data points, write your, as Dhananjay said, highlight your strengths, the work experience that you have had, some exemplary, maybe extracurricular things that you have done. And yeah, even like I said, even a marginal increase will matter a lot once you graduate. Okay, awesome. So I think we have reached to an end of the session and to the Q&A, which was from me. And let's now go to the audience questions. So as we are taking up audience questions, if you guys have more questions, do add them in the comment section. We'll be holding the session for 10 minutes so that, if you guys add your questions, we'll take them up one by one. In the meanwhile, let's take up some of the questions like, okay, so any tips on how to approach describe a difficult situation question on the essay? So I'm assuming, does UNC Kenan Flagler have such a question in the essay?
So in my time, UNC did not have this sort of a question that describe a
Okay.
difficult situation question. But so this is a question that I had faced in other colleges also,
Okay.
and
Okay.
it's an important question. I agree. So how I would suggest working about this was probably so you have in the
So
end
for,
what they
so
really
for
want to see.
sorry to cut you across, Dhananjay.
Yeah.
So this just for the other audiences, insights. If you could tell us what is the whole question. So what is the question about? So what is this describe a difficult question about?
Yeah, so the question is broadly around you have to talk about a challenging situation. The question
Okay.
is that you have to really talk about the situation that you faced in your professional
Okay.
or your personal career, which was a
Okay.
challenging situation, and how you went about it, what you did basically. So, in my personal opinion, I would always prefer to go for a professional career challenging situation, talk about
Hmm.
the situation that you face in your professional career, and talk about what the admissions committee really wants to see over here is a challenging situation in which you were faced with some difficult situation and how you worked upon it, how you made the most out of it, how you centered yourself, or you displayed your leadership abilities, displayed your acumen in business, and multiple other things that you can talk about. And actually, it's a great question to really talk about yourself. So they want
Hmm.
to see you, how you turned it around, and at the end, always quantify whatever work you did with
Hmm.
results. So, like in my personal opinion, I talked about a situation where I was working on a deal on a transaction that was not really going the way we thought it would go, and we were on a short timeline and everything. And the challenging situation was that there were multiple other companies working for the same deal, and we had a lot of situation in our hand. We were in a tricky situation. So I personally displayed leadership abilities. I led from the front, despite being the youngest member in the team. I worked a lot of hours. I worked upon the business aspect and the financial modeling aspect to really ensure that we had the best pricing and valuation models in place. I worked upon the negotiation strategy, and so that was the part that I contributed. And I quantified the results at the end that with my working and everything, the transaction was a success. We were able to work on the deal in a short span of time, and this led to the fund growth of say an X percentage, or you need to just quantify it at the end
Hmm.
just to show that the results were there in place. So that's how I would really approach this question.
Okay. Okay. That's a great answer. And I completely agree with the quantifying thing, because yeah, that shows that how much you were able to say turn around the situation with your efforts. And that's what they're looking at. That even if it was a difficult situation, how did you navigate through it? And what was the outcome at the end? Okay. So let's take up the next question by Anshit, which asks you about your business school interviews.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. The business school interviews are so I had 7 business school interviews to prepare for. Generally, what they are centered around is it's a 1 hour interview. You have the first you will start with talking about yourself, your own background, your own story, your own professional experience. Then you move that story towards your short term goal and your long term goal, and then they will move to why an MBA question, that why you really want to do an MBA.
Hmm.
So then you need to talk about the leadership opportunities that you want to develop, the network you want to develop, the global experience that you want to intake, and then you really need to get into the why that particular college aspect, why this particular college. Then you need to show the detailed research that you have done in that college. You spoke with so many people. You understood about the leadership opportunities. You understood about the clubs, the recruiting sessions, the networking opportunities, the academic courses that we are really interested in. And then you also need to talk about that what you are going to contribute to the college. Say 10 years on the line, you want to bring an investment person, or you want to hold a global conference, you want to go give back to the alumni network. So you can talk about all those aspects in the why that particular college question. And then you move to your own set of questions which are around your strengths and weaknesses, or display a time when you displayed leadership capabilities or something. So that's more of a behavioral interview. That's the mid of the interview, generally a behavioral interview. And after that, towards the end, they will always ask you a question about what question or feedback you have for the college, or anything you want to really know. So I think that's a really good point when you can differentiate yourself, or the admissions committee really tries to see if the candidate is really interested in, by seeing the depth of the question that you really ask from the admissions committee representative. And so for that, you need to do research about the college, and to speak to a lot of people. You need to really understand anything that you have a doubt in, probably, and ask sensible questions to that representative. So that's how the B school interviews are generally structured and centered. A lot of questions about the technicalities of your experience. Generally, no. I think so. What I would say is that the person who's sitting there is probably a person who is not from your own field, who will not really understand the nitty-gritties of your particular field. So don't really go in detail of your work experience technicalities. Just talk at a broad sense of, this is my short-term goal, this is my long-term goal. I have worked in the past in a similar field. And or if you're a career switcher, then the leadership opportunities that you have developed, or the vast amount of experience that you have developed, and how you are going to use that to move into a different experience, into a different field. So yeah, it's about your story, and you don't really need to get into the technicalities at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the latter part of the question, what you said. So I had read somewhere that, Harvard asked this interview question, maybe sometime, maybe about 3 to 4 years ago to applicants, that can you describe your day-to-day work or your work experience, or what you do say in a day, to a 10-year-old. So if you see from this question, if you go to explain your work to a 10-year-old, you cannot get into the technicalities. And that, why would they ask this question? This is because, as Dhananjay said, in the interview panel, or whoever is your interviewer, he or she is not from your background. He or she may be from a completely different background from what you are. I remember that one of my interviewers was actually a school teacher. She had been a school teacher, and that was like pivotally different from what I do. I'm in a corporate sector. I was in a corporate sector. So so that's why, don't get into complete details of your work experience. Like, don't start explaining to them all about data, and how you wrote code using Python and all of that. It's not necessary, and you'll just bore them. So just explain how you would explain to, say, your parents or someone who's not in your industry. And yeah, that will show to you how much you know about your work. Because if you can explain it in such simple and lucid terms, it does mean that you know your work in and out. So yeah, that I would say is the answer to this question, and well said, Dhananjay. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, so let's take up this question. So according to you, what was the biggest standout feature in your profile after assessing from your interviews and application process? So according to you, which was the most unique component?
I think definitely working with the government, I would say. I mean, for sure, is the GMAT first, which brings it to at a certain level of candidates. But after that, when you are at a certain level, you need to further differentiate yourself to really get the maximum amount of scholarship possible. So for that, I would say my experience of working with the government was really critical and crucial. I had a ton of leadership stories to tell about. I had a ton of diverse experiences that I mentioned about in my essays. So that feature was something that I think really differentiated me, because I had all the other things in my application. I had the Indian engineering main, so my quantitative aspect was covered. I was working with finance firms, so I had the sort of experience that I wanted to get into investment banking and private equity in the long term. But this leadership aspect is something that all business schools really look out for, and working with the government actually helped me talk a lot about the leadership opportunities that I had and leadership experiences that I had developed. And that is something that really helped my profile, because I was able to talk about a lot of impact stories that I had. I was really able to connect it to the network that I would like to build in the future, and these things were really helpful for me. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Right, makes sense. And let's take up this question. I would say this is the second last question that we would take up. So, in all practicality, how important do you think is GMAT? So, even though the colleges say that they look at the holistic profile, but what is the on ground reality according to you? Is GMAT the forefront for any application?
Uh, I mean, this is a tough question, I would say,
Hmm.
frankly, because I have had both set of stories. I would suggest that if you have a great score like a 740 and above or a GMAT, I mean, definitely you have a great chance of a B school. But if you don't have a 740 also, even if you have, suppose, even in the high 600s, 650 onwards, then you need to work upon the different aspects of your application profile to get
Hmm.
your foot in the door. And but in my opinion, GMAT is very important. I would suggest, like,
Hmm.
I was looking out for scholarships. I was very keen on scholarships and everything. So for that, I think GMAT is absolutely critical, because on international and
Hmm.
Indian applicant point of pool,
Hmm.
you have this one exam which can really put you in a different league of applicants. So yeah, I mean, for me, this was really critical.
Hmm. Yeah, so I'd like to add on to that with just one incident that I remember that happened in this year's intake. So one of the persons that I met across while I was waiting for my Darden application results, so that person did not take the GMAT. So if you know that some of the schools made GMAT optional this year in 2021 intake, so that person did not have a GMAT score, but he actually got into Darden with full scholarship. Now, let me tell you the catch here. Now, he is not from India, as you may have rightly guessed. He's from Indonesia. And what is his profile is that he has started his own fintech company in Indonesia. So he's already in an entrepreneurial venture, and then he's going to business school to maybe further his business knowledge or take his venture to say multinational, to make it a multinational company and to expand it to geographies. So you see the catch here, right? I mean, considering his profile, he's from a country that is underrepresented, I would say. He has a great profile, and that is why he could take a chance with not taking the GMAT and still getting in with a scholarship. But what happens with Indians, and especially with Indian engineers, which is a competitive pool? Believe me, it is a competitive pool, especially because a lot of people apply from India, not only from India and China as well. So, what happens in that case is to make yourself unique among all of those applicants becomes really tough, because most of those people have done really good in their work, right? So they have done, maybe, they have traveled here and there, they have worked offshore, maybe they have handled loads of data, they've done a lot of analytics in their experience. So, how do you make yourself stand out? And therein the GMAT score becomes super, super crucial, as Dhananjay mentioned that it was for him. So it was for me. Because I also come from an Indian tech background, and I realized that a 730 wasn't going to cut it. If I want to go for a top school with scholarship, then it would have to be above 740, as Dhananjay said. So yeah, it definitely matters, but I would say that for Indians, for people who come from competitive pool, if you do not have a super unique background, the GMAT is one of the very, very crucial aspects of the application. Okay, awesome. So yeah, with this, I would say that we have come to an end of the session. So great session, Dhananjay. And if you could share, one or two insights or tips for all our future applicants or prospective MBA students.
Thank you, Deepaniti. I think this was a really great session. Also, really enjoyed it, and I would really suggest to all the applicants would be to if you're early in your journey or even if you're late in the journey, focus upon the GMAT. I think if you're able to get in a good score, so 740 and above, definitely to really help you, and then just try to get your applications into round one as much as possible. Don't overlook any aspect of your application. A polished application looks really good, and that really sets you apart. And no need to really rush your applications and take your time, work upon it. And yeah, I mean that's broadly what it. The entire package is really important. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so great. Thank you, Dhananjay, again for sharing so many insights with us. I think it was a very insightful session. We gathered a lot of inputs from your journey, and I'm sure that the audience would have done the same. And at the end, guys, just a quick reminder about Quant 2.0, because I think that it's a very, very interesting product, and you should definitely check out the launch of the product. And we have again added it in the comment section if you have missed it before. So do check out the link and register yourself. And I would say that it's a great product, and you should definitely wait for it. So once again, thank you all for tuning in, and have a good day and good night. Thank you.